pitching a tent, learning bushcraft, paddling a canoe down a shady river. When you join Scouts, it opens up a new world of adventure and excitement, way more fun than anything on a screen. Scouts are looking for new members right now, and it's a great chance to try new things, travel to exciting places and make lifelong friends. Scouts need adult volunteers too, so it's a great chance for you to join and spend time with your family. Google Scouts Queensland today. The adventure awaits.
The following podcast is made by youth from Kennedy Region Scouts. This episode was recorded at Townsville City Library's digital studios.
Hello and welcome to Scouts Compass. Today I have with me Panda from Lome Island and Mozzie from Kerwin. How are you?
Well, doesn't get any better than this, right?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good. And today we are talking about parent experiences at Jamboree. So, Panda, what was your role at Jamboree other than having children at Jamboree with you?
Well, I was one of the service leaders. So as part of that, I was part of the program team, and so been involved more into the adult subcamp, and was responsible for running some of the activities. So my particular position was at the seaside activity, running all the ocean-based activities such as stand-up paddleboarding, just swimming, inflatables, sandcastle making, and but I was particularly posted at the snorkeling station, which was pretty cool.
What about you, Mozzie?
I was a welfare leader in one of the Chile subcamps, C10.
What do you think was your favourite part about having children at Jamboree with you, like having your kids with you at Jamboree?
Well, for me, it was really just the ability to see them evolve during the experience and how they interacted with the other kids and what they got out of the whole experience. So, when I had the chance to catch up with them, just hearing how they related that day to day and who they met and what exciting activities they did, and just sharing that with them was just amazing.
Yeah, I think I have to echo that and say it was seeing that growth that happened over the length of the camp. It was really interesting, and it was really reassuring as a parent to be there and be able to see that they were okay and doing all right. And I've got to be honest, I managed to sneak a hug here and there, so that was pretty good for me too.
Yeah, me too. Don't tell it.
Don't tell anyone. All right, Panda, we will have a chat to you first. So we've covered what your role at Jamboree was. In your role, what was some of the biggest challenges you faced?
The intensity of the schedule, just keeping up with just the activities. We had to be on the bus, that way we were the first bus leaving in the morning and probably one of the last buses to come back. So the intensity of the program itself. But then it was just also just getting into the routine of what the activities were about, scheduling my day so I could get everything done, including being able to have a decent shower or feel still a bit human at the end of the day, and how to manage that. So it takes a little while to just get into that particular routine or find the right pattern. But the human experiences you get out of that was just amazing, between the people you work with and then the interactions with the kids.
When you saw your children at your activity and you got to interact with them in terms of you're running an activity and they're there participating, what was that like?
Well, you do try not to act any differently, right? Because you're meant to treat all of the scouts the same way. But you have to admit you feel a little bit special of seeing your kids come through your station. I'm the type of parents as well that would probably take that opportunity to tease them a little bit more than I should. So that's just a little bit of opportunity for a bit of fun. But again, it's just being able to see them real life, whether it's at your activity or during that day, into how they interact with others and what they make out of the day.
When we were just at the Jamboree site and you weren't on an activity, so say you had a day off or you had already come back and it was later in the evening, were there any opportunities you had to come and visit your children at their unit at all?
Yeah, I got really lucky in that sense that the adult subcamp was probably about, 100 meters away from the Chile subcamp where my children were. So if I planned it right, at the end of each day, I could then go at the subcamp and just keep up with the group. But it was not just my kids. Since, as leaders or parent helpers, you get to know all of these kids. So it was just great to see all of the group to which that I'm normally attached to and to interact with these guys too.
Did you notice any changes in your children, not from compared to like when Jamboree started? Did you see any changes during Jamboree, and were there anything major that you noticed after Jamboree?
Absolutely. The biggest thing was their level of independence, I found, that grew out through the camp, and their level of compliance at the end of the camp, just accepting things where they are, and not being what you would normally see out of a typical teenager, which is a lot more pushback, etc. Yeah, there was definitely a before and after, noticeably.
Did you experience anything that you think would make the difference in you and the way that you are at Scouts in terms of how you lead things? Did you pick up anything from?
Definitely. I think, the growth is for everyone as part of that sort of experience when you haven't shared that before. Understanding the mechanics of the whole Jamboree was just astonishing for me, and how it's a well-oiled machine despite the scale of it, and understanding what role you can play into making differences to these children, and probably more on the patience and adaptability on the different types of kids you come and see, the youth backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, because there were people from all over the world. And seeing the impact, I think, has made me understand a lot more about, okay, this is what it's all about. This is the end result.
Would you consider going from a parent helper into a uniformed leader after your experiences at Jamboree?
I've been asked that question many times. And I think I wear it in my heart and my soul. I haven't committed to it, just more for the fact that because of my work commitments, I just don't want to let anyone down. So keeping that flexibility as an adult helper. But it's not that I don't act as one. I think it's just, again, from a commitment side, don't want to let.
Did you get to experience anything at Jamboree with your children at all?
Well, the entertainment, that was part of the things every night, because that's the part we could be together. And one of even at the closing ceremony, just sitting down on the floor, having both my kids on either side and just being able to hug them during the fireworks, that was pretty cool. And kind of closing the whole journey together. But yeah, there was a few. And then when they come through your station, of course, during day activities.
Cool. Did they tell you any stories from Jamboree that, as much as you were there, that you wish you maybe would have been there to experience with them, or anything like that, or any stories that they had told you?
Well, I think that you got to find the right balance as a parent to be there, yet not to overcome. The whole point is for them to, if they are faced with challenges, they have to work it out, and without you being around. So being there for supports for anything critical if necessary, but it's all about them being okay. This was challenging. Both of them were unit leaders, and so they obviously had additional responsibilities to cover, and with that comes the management of the different youth in their group and the dynamics, how to manage that and all that sort of stuff. So being able to listen, but yet they needed to go through that experience themselves. So it's just about, I think, trying to find the right balance between the two.
How did it feel seeing so many people, so many youth together, having fun, enjoying the time, and knowing that you, as part of the program team, had a role to play in that experience?
Look, when I first walked in at campground, and we were part of the first ones to arrive, right? Because we were there a bit earlier, which was good to start setting up camp. But when I saw the scale of it, and as it grew, as all these youth came about, and then again the machinery around the logistics and how it it just rolled. And there was some hiccups and things that were not, the best, etc. But it worked. At the end of the day, everyone got fed. Everyone went to their activities, despite the weather challenges that we encountered. Everyone had the same experience, and it's like I've heard before, and I would agree that Scouts can run a camp in a more efficient manner than the Army can. I hope that's right. But yeah, it's just amazing, and it's reflected in what the youth get out of it in regards to the fact, the number of activities they can do, the support that is available if support is required, and the interactions they can create between each other.
In terms of preparing for Jamboree, because you had to prepare yourself for Jamboree, but you also had to help your kids prepare. What did that look like in terms of, fundraising and getting everything ready, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there was quite a number of activities in the lead up to Jamboree, obviously, for the fundraising part. It was about participating as much as we could. Obviously, we were fundraising for our whole group, and we're lucky that we've got a large group, so we could rotate depending on availability, but there was quite a lot there, and it was exciting just to be able to know that we'd be able to provide financial support for whoever needed it. And so there was, but what I preferred is more the gradual exposure to what Jamboree was going to be about. So the initial meetings, then the connections with the units, then you get those initial teams meeting we had with the whole unit, for example, was great, just as an introductory. Hey, these are the various units, etc., and how they're going to be dispatched. And then, yes, making sure in the last about week getting those bags ready, because I did oversight the bag, but the all intent was them to own their bag, which mostly they did. Yeah, and that's where the excitement builds, I think, in the last couple of weeks.
I think there was, really good lead in to the whole experience of just little stuff happening all the way along. And when it came to the end, it was touch and go for the gear to arrive from Scouts at the end of it. I remember seeing things from Australia Post and things coming and going, Jesus, is he even going to make it in time? And then when it finally showed up, I think we're all really excited by then. Bags were out, ready to be packed, and everything was packed in. And that was pretty seamless by then because there had been enough lead in that we had plenty of time to get that done.
I agree that excitement, even because it was pretty good. Scouts had organised tracking for the packages the Queensland contingent packages. So you knew when it was leaving and when it was coming. And just the build up and knowing you're going to come home and you're going to have your little goodies package was pretty fun.
And it was like within ours arrived like just 2 days before we left or something. It was like, oh, is this actually going to make it? Really?
Mozzie, you were a leader.
Yeah, welfare leader
of your unit or for your subcamp?
Subcamp, yeah.
Subcamp. Cool. Can you tell us a bit about what that role was like?
Well, mainly that role is looking after people's medication. So I thought I was going to have a pretty crazy time. There's a lot of medication on camp. So that was actually a really logistical role. And it really would have helped if parents actually followed the instructions and packaged everything the way they were supposed to in blister packs. But it's all right. We coped. We had lists. We took down everything and kept on top of it. Yeah, it was a pretty big role.
What did you do in terms of supporting your unit?
So really all four of the leaders who were in the subcamp shared all of the roles. And basically we would have one day we were on duty with the Scouts in the subcamp, one day where you'd go off subcamp with some of our Scouts. So one day it would be off subcamp in Jamboree. We get to actually go around and see a bit of what's happening in Jamboree. So usually you ended up being in the subcamp helping the leader who stayed in subcamp most of that day. So most of our time at Jamboree was actually spent in our subcamp. There's a fair bit to get done there. And then one day you'd go off-site with a group and then we'd rotate through those roles and you'd get a day off. I'd say to any leaders who are going that if you're going to have those days off, you've got an opportunity to book in for tours on those days off. I didn't do that. I think you really should do that. Otherwise, you end up getting roped into doing more stuff on site, and you really do need to give yourself that break. for me, I've got to say in that first 4 days, I didn't get more than 4.5 hours sleep a night. And then after that, it was like 5 hours sleep a night. So it's pretty demanding. Like, it's not physically demanding, but there's just a lot to get done and a lot to do and be around, and there's lots of action all the time, and the kids need you from about 6 a.m. through to somewhere around. If you want to have a shower and be human and get to bed, then you're going to be doing that after 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Panda, did you go on any leader tours or rest days or anything like that?
Yeah, I at the last minute, I had to work with the tour team to try to get something organised because my day off got changed just about 2 days before we started Jamboree. So everything was booked. But I did persevere, and I did manage to go to the Australia Zoo on that day off. And I was lucky to go with Gecko as well, who just happened to be on the same day, who's part of our Nome Island group as well. So that was good, just having adult time. And there was youth around, but it was just us going through the Australia Zoo. So that was really good.
So I think my experience of Australia Zoo was pretty good. That was one of the activities I did on my day off. So not on day off, that was an activity I did on my day off site with Scouts. And that's a day I got to travel with my Scout. So I got to travel with my kid and go to Australia Zoo and see him around and experience that stuff together. So that was really a great part of it. I still tried not to be too much around him and intervene too much.
How do you think you being a leader in your child's unit, as opposed to just being there as a parent helper or part of a different team that's not always with them, how do you think that shaped your experience and his experience?
I like to think it wouldn't have changed my experience too much or his experience too much. It's hard to hold yourself back as a parent sometimes and to not be more judgmental of your child than other people's children.
So true.
Sometimes I feel like the children of Scout leaders who are on things get held to a slightly higher standard. And it was interesting because my child was one of the younger Scouts in our unit. So there were very few who are in that, have only been in Scouts for a year, just on 13 age group. Most of the Scouts in the unit were much older than that. So it's also hard to not baby the people who are the little kids and jump in too much for them. And the other Scout who was in our unit, who was of the same age group, was in our sub camp, who was of the same age group. He also had his mum there. So I think for those really younger kids, maybe that's a really good bit of support to have. But I think both of them would have made it without us. They looked like they did just fine.
Cool. You said you got to experience Australia. You went to Australia Zoo with your son,
yeah.
Sean. Did you wish that you maybe did a little bit more in terms of going on activities with him, or were you okay with the balance of seeing him in your unit in the evenings and then going on an activity with him?
Yeah, I think the balance was really quite good. The other day I saw quite a lot of him was the day he was in duty patrol. And for me, that was a really wonderful experience because my experience of him is somebody who doesn't take a lot of responsibility and independence. And he really rose to the occasion on that day of being in the duty patrol. And to see him acting independently, looking for things to do, getting stuff done, making it all happen, that's the magic of Jamboree. That's the growth that you're seeing, these kids suddenly stepping up, taking control. So the poor duty patrol, they would have to get up before all the other kids to make the lunches for people to take off site. So they'd start work at like 5:30 in the morning. And he was up, out of bed, working. So there's a bit of pride there that you see in that. So I think the balance was pretty good. I enjoyed seeing that growth and seeing him achieving stuff and everyday life stuff, but it's big stuff. Yeah.
Did you notice any changes, again, before Jamboree, anything change major or even small things in terms of behaviour and the way he presents himself and that kind of thing during Jamboree and, again, after?
Yeah, I definitely think that there was massive growth there and the ability to take responsibility for things, be trusted to do stuff. and actually get it done, I think there was a year's worth of growth in 2 weeks, to be honest. It was huge, the change.
Second that.
Did your role change how you saw Jamboree from a leadership perspective at all?
Well, I did not understand the scale of Jamboree. I mean, I understood the numbers in theory, but actually being in it, and I didn't understand a whole lot about a Jamboree while I was there until afterwards, because if you're a sub-camp leader, you're in there all the time and you don't see... Kids were coming back and saying stuff. I didn't see esky racing, these amazing construction projects that were going on. I was oblivious to all of that stuff. Like I was just stuck in this little world the whole time. I don't want to say stuck like it's a bad thing, but I was in this little bubble. And then you see the stuff at the end of the slideshows and you go, wow, so much happened here. The entertainment at night was a big thrill. I did get to go to a lot of that, and so I knew there were big things happening, but that role in subcamps is really consuming.
I know, Panda, you mentioned just the fact that you were there with your children changed a lot. Do you think that you just being there, even though you weren't always with them, as same as you, Panda, you weren't always with them, but you got to see the smile on their face every time they got back, the excitement of going to the activities. Do you think that changed your experience, that helped shape what you left Jamboree with?
I don't know if it really would have changed that much of just having my own child there. I know the interactions I was having with a lot of scouts because of the role that I had in welfare. I was checking in with people all day, every day, and talking to scouts, and just vicariously having that experience of everything that's going on and seeing all of that stuff. And there are smiles and tears and the whole lot happens there, and it's a little bit intense the whole time, but it's intense in a good way. And yeah, it was great seeing the change over time happening to my child, but it's also seeing all of those other kids.
What do you think the most rewarding part of just the whole Jamboree experience would be for you?
It has to be seeing that growth of the youth and what went on there. It was just really amazing. And I think I've always liked the idea that we have in Scouts about youth leading, and it's the youth who are teaching each other. And you don't really see it until you've got it in that microcosm of a Jamboree where it's such a pressure cooking environment. That growth that we see is really a result of the youth's influence on each other. It's you can't let your mates down, so that they grow into that experience because their mates are there and they have to step up.
So I agree with Adam, and I think so we talk about, we obviously had our kids there, so seeing that growth in them and being able to talk about it probably in more detail because we're close, right? But it's really about seeing all these kids connect, that those friendships they develop, and you can see at the end of the journey the way they relate to their stories and their experience. It's evident this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience that they'll carry forever. And I think that particular environment, that growth, that sharing is in all of the kids, and seeing that in them is just so rewarding.
The sharing thing is really, really important. I think one of the things that really facilitated change in my Scout, and I think change in all the Scouts there, is it's really clever in the way that things have been set up. So we arrived early on and set up our little sub camp, and it was in an empty field. And then the next day, these camps popped up around us, and we had Western Australians on one side and Victorians on another side. NT was next to us. So every sub camp around you was set up so that you would be in relations with people from all over the country. And some of those sub-camps had international people in them. And I hadn't realised before the importance of badge swapping. it was really, really important because it gives you a reason to go and talk to all of those other kids.
Yeah, it gives you a reason to go and interact with someone that you've never spoken
with
to
everyone.
before.
And it really facilitates those interactions. And then we also had these things in the sub camps where to achieve some of our badge work for Jamboree, you needed to invite a patrol over from another sub camp for dinner and all of it. So it was really great the way it facilitated that interaction and the socialisation and meeting people. I think that was huge.
I want to throw this out to both of you, more so you, Mozzie, but what do you think it was like having Ventura participants? I don't know if, Mozzie, you had any Ventura participants in your sub camp, but how do you think that helped, or how do you think that happened in your...
The maturity level of the Venturers we had in comparison to the Scouts was massive, and they really led in our sub camp. So most of our patrol leaders were Venturers, and I wonder if it would have been a completely different experience without them there, just because they were so mature and organised and had such an understanding of what they were doing. I think younger Scouts, it might have been slightly more chaotic.
From what I experienced into the C033 subcamp as well, I would agree. But I think it brought that level for the younger Scout patrols, it brought that level of reassurance, and they knew they had some older Scouts they could lean on as well, or just follow in their footsteps and see what they were doing. And I thought it actually combining both was a good balance overall. And I know it's not what normally Jamboree is about, but I would see some benefit in being adopted, for further Jamborees.
I have some messages from your youth members here with me. Panda, I'm going to give yours to you first, and just read out. I think you had Alana and Nara, so you had two. Just read out what they said for me.
Yikes! It's like opening a mystery box. Oh, I got two pieces of paper. Hold on, I have to work out.
Panda's just noticed that one of her Scouts is very verbal and quite capable of writing a large essay.
Both of them, a lot more than I expected. I'm trying to figure out, okay, so this is Nara and this is the line. Let's start with Nara, all right? This is my younger child Scout. I thought it was amazing because I can have some extra support, not only from a leader, but from a mother. And I think it's very special to endure some time together and do the activities like the concerts and being on a station. So we got to socialise a bit more than just seeing her in the afternoons when she gets back from the beach from Seaside. Regards, Nara. It's actually a lot more tempered than I would expect.
Just back to what Nara said, how do you think from just what he wrote, how do you think he thought what do you think he thought it was like having you there with him?
Well, out of the two, Nara would have been the one that would have looked for comfort from me the most. He's still, I guess, emotionally a little bit dependent. So I think it's just knowing that if anything happened, I would have been able to be there. But I have to admit, throughout the whole experience, he didn't lean on that nowhere near as much as what I thought he would originally. And what we talked about before with Mozzie is just the independence he actually demonstrated throughout the whole. And I think he wanted to prove it to himself and to prove it to probably me and to prove it to others as well, of what he was capable of. But just knowing, I guess, that I was there was probably reassuring in case.
All right, let's hear what Alana said.
All right. Hey, Mom, smiley face. So I read Nara's letter, and he was all lovely, lovely-dovey. Personally, I can't let that slide, so we're doing good cop, bad cop. As a mother, I felt like she felt the need to be present with us for this once-in-a-lifetime experience, and oh my gosh, was it worth it? At some points, she was the only person keeping me in the roller coaster of emotions that is the end of Jamboree. I am more than glad to have been able to share it with my mother. Moral of the story, take care of your moms, or they always do the same for you. Love, Elan. And then he says, P.S. Hey, you thought I was a big meanie. That is definitely my cheeky eldest.
All right, same question as I gave you for Nara's. What do you think? How do you think he felt having you there?
Yeah, Elan is a lot more independent and always has been. And he definitely set himself a big goal that he wanted to be, knowing that he was going to be a patrol leader. And he only had boys in his patrol, 100% boys, Ventura boys. So with that came a fair bit of, I think, a challenge into keeping them engaged, interested, and thinking about other things than socializing. So I think he appreciated just that when he had a few rough times in trying to keep his patrol participating and engaged and trying his best at getting them involved, just being able to talk through it. Had a couple of talks and that would have been helpful, I reckon.
Mozzie, I'm going to hand yours.
All right.
Let's hear what Sean had to say.
Sean said he's pretty short and sweet here, but he said, I felt no different from other scouts as a result of having a parent at Jamboree. So his line when I've been asking him about getting ready to write this was that we don't have parents at Scouts. So apparently that is genuinely where he's at.
Yeah, cool. Where do you think that comes from in terms of, I don't have a dad at Scouts. He's just one of my leaders. Where do you think that?
I think that really stems all the way back to when he was in Joey's. And we started out, and I said to him, you can't have a dad on Scouts. Nobody else has dads here. And he's always been really conscious of that and that he needs to do his own thing and just get on with stuff. Yeah, so I think he did come and talk to me a couple of times during the camp and debrief a little bit. So I think it wasn't all like he had no parent there. But he certainly, I'm sure he felt like he didn't have any different experience.
It's got something to do with, you know your parent well enough and so well that you can, if you really need to have a chat and get some help and you don't think you can talk to anyone else, you've got that there, and that can really make the difference between your day, spiraling downhill, and then you go and talk to your parent and they give you some tips and stuff to get back on track.
But I got to say, for the other scouts who are in the sub camp, I think everybody finds their person amongst the leaders who are there that they can go to have that support and that bit of connection with the adult who's there. And it's a different leader for different scouts, but they all find somebody.
Panda, I did want to touch on the fact that Nara and Alan, they're brothers, you weren't there as often as, say, I was, but what do you think Nara having at least an older brother there with him to help him along, how do you think that would have played out, or how did you see that play out when you got to see them?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And we were, surprisingly, out of the C033 unit, there was how many? 8 siblings?
I think we had 7 or 8 sibling pairs.
Which is just incredible. Out of the 30, half of them were siblings of some sorts. So, and overall, I was just really amazed on how each of these family ties were tried to be kept respectful of each other, but you have your experience, I have my own experience, but we're just in sharing this together from afar. And I think for my 2 boys, Nara in particular has always felt like he needed to live in the footsteps of his brother, and it has a lot to prove, which that's just something he imposes on himself. And I think he was just keen to actually prove that he could run this as well and live the experience just as well as his older brother has been able to demonstrate before. So in some cases, being brothers, I reckon they would benefit maybe from being in different camps more, just because that pressure would not exist. But they made it work. I think they made it work pretty well.
Did you have any siblings in your sub camp?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like we had anywhere near as many as C33, but we did have some siblings there. Most of them were in separate patrols from each other, so I think it was the same sort of thing. They stayed and did their own thing. And also a lot of the siblings we had were enough different in age groups from each other that they were moving in different sort of cliques in the sub camp. Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to our final segment, rapid fire Q&A. So if you've got questions that you've written down, if you don't, that's fine. It'll run like this. It'll go 1 minute. You've got 30 seconds to think of a question and ask it, and then whoever you ask it to has 30 seconds to answer that question. You can ask it to anyone sitting at the table, including Nathan sitting next to me. And we'll start with you, Panda.
Excellent. I actually had a question for you. So you attended Jamboree, right, as a scout? No, as a venturer.
As a venturer.
Sorry. What would you say to a person who is considering joining Scouts after hearing about Jamboree?
I would say if you've been considering it, I would say just pull the plug. Just go 1 or 2 nights, see if you like it, connect with some people, talk to people about their experiences, what they've done, how they've done it, the connections they've made, the experiences they've had, because it's more than just you go on a night and you do activities with people. There's learning involved and there's experiences to be had, fun to be done. I think it's really you just have to stop thinking about it and just go in and do it. And that's the only way you're ever going to get into it is if you just go in and do it.
I think I've got a question for Nathan. I want to know what it's like making that transition from being a youth who's there on a camp, having that camp experience, to being somebody who's working in logistics and behind the scenes.
Yeah, so it's a massive difference. So one day you basically rock up and you got to do first day of work. You got to find where you got to go. You got no one really there. You got to meet new people, find where you're eating, find your showers, toilets, everything. So it's actually a massive job the first 2-3 days trying to figure out where you are, what you're doing and everything. So it's pretty big, but it is worth it just to have like that independence where you don't have really anyone else to lean on. You've got to go, okay, I've got to do this. Right, what do I have to do? How do I do it? Okay, I've got a plan. Let's go.
Panda, would you consider sending your youth member to another major scouting event, World Scout, Venture, the next AJ in 2028? Or do you think you would ever consider either as well going back with them and sending them off to one?
Absolutely. I think just seeing the scale and any impact, etc., when you put that into the perspective of then maybe a bigger, if it's an international event, where let's say we're in a different country, so you add the cultural aspect to it, I definitely support it. It's all about obviously being able to plan it financially and making sure that it's doable. But I know Nara has already talked about Poland, so. Yep.
There's definitely planning going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I've applied I've actually gotten onto the Australian contingent for Venture at the end of the year. Is Alan going?
He hasn't mentioned it. I think he's got his eyes on Leap for sure. With Alan, I think it's not the will to go that's going to stop him. It's just making sure he can. It's a really busy year in grade 12 and all the other activities he's got. It's just picking and choosing what makes sense for him to be balancing.
We definitely had scouts with us who, when they came back, they were thinking that Jamboree was going to be their last scouting activity, and now they're going adventure. So it made that impact on people.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered Venture until I got to Jamboree about halfway through, and I think I went down to the Nat Shack and saw some stuff about Venture, and then that night when I got my phone, I called my mum and went, I'm applying for Venture. It was the fact that I had never been on a major scouting event other than Leap, which is only a week long, but hearing and seeing things that have been done on Venture and then experiencing Jamboree, I think was was really what made the difference between me considering and me actually going. So it's like I said, with joining Scouts, you can think about it all you want, but it doesn't happen until you just pull the plug and actually do it. So, yeah.
And as you say, like when I first joined Scout, I heard a lot that a lot of times the Scouts go into Scouts section after, if they have been in Cubs or Joys before, or just do Scouts and then go to Jamboree, and that's the finality of it. Then they don't come back. But I had nowhere near that experience with all of the youth that actually joined in our sub camp in this particular time. And if anything, it was a platform for more, for demanding more and wanting to do more. So I don't know where that stems from, but that's great because I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and you don't consider those things as things that you would do until you've experienced a major event, and then you go, wow, the sense of community and the friends that you make. You keep chasing that rush of dopamine and adrenaline and stuff. You keep chasing that to continue to find new challenges and stuff. And I know for me specifically, I really enjoy finding new challenges and things that I don't think I'm going to be able to do, and going in and working out how I can complete it and how I best do that. And I don't know if you've seen that in your children after doing even just small weekend camps, and they just keep going and wanting to do more.
Yeah, the definitely, and that definitely applies to Alana in particular. And that's the challenge, is just to actually find what's bigger than what I've done before. So what is actually going to put me in my comfort zone?
What's the next step up from what's going to put me out of my comfort zone again? And
doing the same thing is not his thing. There are a lot more. So it's just about keeping up with the pace and then discovering what are these other camps that are actually going to be the next scale up, and how are we going to make it happen.
What about you, Mozzie?
Yeah, I think that there's bigger and better things to be done, and I think that I think Sean really enjoyed it, and I think he's very keen to go to Poland. But I also think that he still has that love of the little camps with just his unit, and hanging out with the other scouts on a bit of a smaller scale. I think that's a little less intense, and that's nice too.
Oh, he's got room to grow, being one of the youngest ones, so definitely.
Yeah, he might even fit in a second Jamboree.
Yeah,
I think he's probably young enough that he might fit in the next one. A question for both of you, Panda. What if you had the opportunity to go on another Jamboree, but you were asked to come up with an activity or come up with something to do on Jamboree? What would you pick and why?
It'd be easy to go for areas of comfort, and somewhere where I think I can bring some value. And Seaside was good in that sense, because that just right is. And I've got a marine biology background, so it was just me. But I actually think I'd like to think about trying to bring an activity that is never done before, maybe around STEM or maybe around. I work with weather and something like that, so I'm thinking about putting an activity around weather or understanding weather and monitoring weather.
We certainly had some weather.
That's it, exactly.
Did you bring it with you? Did you?
No, I wish I had that much power and control. So I try to think outside the box. But I'm not creative naturally, so I'd have to put quite a lot of thought in it. But yeah, definitely would love to be involved in a challenge like that.
And how about you, Mozzie?
I guess I have two experiences to draw off when I'm thinking about that. When I went to Jamboree, I was a leader on activities, and now I've had an experience of being in the lines. I don't know what happens next. Maybe something in logistics, something behind the scenes would be interesting to do and see how that all happens, because it amazes me, the communication and how we adapted continually, and the overcoming problems, what was going on behind those scenes of working out how to do what, how to make things happen, how to adapt to the various problems that we ran into. I think that would be really interesting to be part of. My next mission is I'm leading a sub camp at Leap, so maybe it's sub camp leader next time. Who knows? That might be a bigger job.
Cool. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you both for coming. It's been great hearing from both of you, about especially the fact that you guys didn't just do the same role. You both did different things. It was really great hearing the differences in your experiences and, again, the similarities between, having kids with you at Jamboree. So thanks for coming. Is there any closing remarks that you wanted to add in?
Yeah, I do. I really wanted to echo something Panda had said earlier. The team I was part of as leaders in a sub camp, by the end of those 2 weeks, we felt pretty close to each other, I think, and they were really supportive, really strong team, and the connections that we made with other leaders there, just from an adult perspective, was fantastic. Like, it just great people to be around and a great experience to have. So I don't want anybody to think the lack of sleep was a problem. It was actually, you weren't tired the whole time.
Well,
Right.
you just keep going, right? You just don't have another choice because it's just so fast paced.
And that network that's around you is fantastic.
I'd
Great
like
people.
to echo that. That's what Mozzie said as well. I got the luxury to be exposed to the teamwork we built within the seaside group that I was, and the snorkeling in particular, but even the bigger scale of the seaside group, and how we went into a routine on getting the stations up and running and packed down by the end of the day. But also then coming into the C033 units every day and help out and look at the connections that, the other leaders were doing in that camp. And I think as much as there were some challenges and the sleep deprivation and physical and everything else, I think they would all say the same. This was just really fantastic experience. So as an adult, it's really cool, worthwhile.
And I think the other really important thing you're hearing here is that there are things that you can do where you'll be near where your child is, and there's things you can do where you'll be away from where your child is. And either way, you can have a great experience.
Totally.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming today. It's been really great hearing your stories. But for everyone else listening, stay tuned for the next upload. Well, we will hear from a Venture service leader, our rover, who was part of the contingent media team, and a unit line leader from C033. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, thank you guys for coming. It's been really great hearing from you.
If you want to know more about Scouts, head to the Canning Region Scouts Facebook page or scoutsqld.com.au today.